Hey guys, Dave and Len here. This is Wargame Chat. Before we start with this, we have a question that was asked for both of us. The question's from Michael Stearns. What game did you anticipate the most that turned out to be a major disappointment? For me, it would be the Alamo Remembered from Victory Point Games. I believe it was originally printed in a magazine, but anyhow, it was rated like a 3.4 on Board Game Geek, so they re-released it years later. Why you would want to release a game again that was rated a 3.4, I don't know, but it was essentially, it had great components like everything from Victory Point Games with the laser cut counters and stuff, but it's basically just a bluffing game, and there was like no strategy or anything, so it was like kind of pointless. So that was a major disappointment. I was shocked at how bad it was, because normally Victory Point Games were, their games were excellent, so that was a total disappointment. What about you? What disappointed you the most? What game?
Well, today's Anzio game disappointed me.
Yeah, that's true.
One strategy and tactics magazine game called Saratoga. Now, the major problem with Saratoga is on the wrong side of the river, which greatly affects the game. And secondly, there's all sorts of things like you never quite, you have unlimited stacking. And but on the other hand, you have rules about scouting, putting out screens, and you're never quite sure whether you should keep your units together or lot. It just never seemed like you were using 18th century tactics. So, and that was really disappointing.
Yep. Alright, if you guys got any other questions for us, definitely put them in the comments section of the video. Alright, we'll start the Wargame Chat now. This one's about the 7 Years War convention Len went to. I meant to go to it, but I wasn't able to because it's like 3 hours from my house and things just didn't work out. But where's it located, Len?
South Bend, Indiana, where the Notre Dame University is located.
And why don't you tell us what kind of games and stuff you played while you were there?
Well, we played miniatures. Let's see, I played 5 of them. On Friday morning, I played actually a prelude to the Blenheim battle. And it's one guy's homemade rules, and it was supposed to be a test session. Was
it fun?
Actually, I liked it. It wasn't that bad. The question we had at the end was, how complex was it? I was telling him the problem, I didn't think it was overly complex, but I had the infantry. The cavalry guys had a different opinion on it. And the problem is this is like the early age of the bayonet and musket. And all armies had their different philosophies on fighting and training. With the cavalry, some guys you just trotted up to the front lines in several ranks. You shot at them, then you pulled back and reloaded, and you did this as often as you could. Others you would trot up, shoot, and then charge in. You know, pull your safe. Others you just roared in at a gallop, and there were other techniques. So sometimes you did have strange results, like the cavalry lines just changing place, or both sides recoiling. And I told them, well, unless you have this detail, we're just playing Napoleonics with guys with powdered wigs. So, yeah, and by the time Napoleon comes, the Napoleonic era, everybody's got figured out their tactics and how they fight and how they trained. So, second one was the plantation attack. On a Caribbean island, one plantation owner refuses to accept, obey the British who have just taken over the island. So they have
What war was that?
I think this is either the French and Indian Wars, or it might have been the earlier War of Austrian Succession. And because in both places they took over Caribbean islands, the British did. And actually it looked pretty intimidating. I had a British attacker force. I had 2 regiments, 2 battalions actually. And the enemy was behind walls and everything, but then as you attacked, took a few losses. They thought I had the tough job. I had a company of Swiss mercenaries, and actually they were average rated behind entrenchments. but I had twice as many troops, and they did last longer than most they usually do, because they managed to pass every morale roll until they were down to like about 2 figures, 2 out of like about 16. Okay, and the next line was freeboaters, which were actually at this time the pirates found out that smuggling was more profitable than pirating, so they were mostly they formed a unit. But I noted that they seemed to have to roll for morale when other things happened, and so when I made contact with them, they ran pretty fast. So,
how many people showed up to that convention?
Oh, I'd say at least 40, 50.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For a boutique convention like that, that's about what you would expect.
Well, what I found was amazing, we're getting people from like Kansas, Nebraska, Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand Indiana, or in Ohio, Michigan would get a lot of people. Strangely, only a few people from Illinois, so.
Yeah, that's surprising because it's like 3 hours away from here, or 3.5, yeah.
I took the train there. Next time I think I will drive. Next door, Saturday morning is called Mohawk Valley. It used the flint and tomahawk rules. And, well, we did lose it, but I kept the Indians away for the longest time. It's the guy next to me whose troops routed. So, and next was Point Pleasant. This is a battle between the Indians and the Virginia militia. And everybody forgets between the war, 7 Years' War, and the American Revolution, we had a few Indian wars. And this is between the Cherokee and Virginia. And used the same flint and tom, but they used a different way of determining orders of battle. Because in the previous one, you were given cards and you had command points, and the commander of each side had their own game going, their own strategy game going. But this one's a little more, they wanted to simplify it. So it's just, this one was picking a card. Now, I commanded the Indians. Yeah, I got the command because I was the most experienced on the side, one whole game. And I was very good at card counting. And what it is I got the Indians up to the edge of the forest, waited to, they used up enough cards, and we charged to the abribus, or whatever those pointy sticks that are sticking out of the ground. And we meleeed with them, and there was something about if they lost a quarter of their troops, they were lost, they would lose, and I did it. Actually, what it came back is after all the melees. Well, they needed just one more person. So the next card was Indian, and what one guy did was he just decided to shoot the muskets. And you know, he had about 4 or 5 guys, so it was enough to get one guy. And I pointed out that my plan was that Indians were better in melee, so that's why we, instead of shooting, we just went Zulu on them. And the last one, Saturday night, was a large battle. It was homemade rules. Now, I knew we were going to have a problem when I saw how big the table was and how the Indians started one end, the British here, and oh, we're supposed to meet. So after 3 hours, I finally made contact with the enemy and started shooting them. By that time,
wow.
Yeah, this is a problem sometimes some game masters have. Actually, the setup was good. He had lots of good stuff, so naturally he wants to show it off. And well, it was a play test, and it's like I said, it took 3. If it was half the size and half the forces, I probably would have had a good time. Or I was thinking, if this was, if we had players who played the rules, and this was a club that we'd have like 3-4 hours to play with, then it would have been different. Because afterwards, I talked to one guy on my side, and there were things we would have done differently if we had a clear understanding of the rules. So, like I said, it was great. in some way, it isn't a bad system, just needs a little more, but lesson to all you people out there. When you're doing a convention game, keep it simple.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I remember once I was at a convention, in addition to simple, keep the game where it plays fast, some guy put on some huge, it was like a science fiction game with orcs and humans, and each player got like either a vehicle or something, and I don't know, he had too many players. It was like 8 players or something, and it was like an hour between your turns, so you take your turn, which took like 2 minutes, and then just sit there for 58 minutes doing nothing while I was going around the table, and everyone was going and stuff, so yeah, that didn't work out, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And they're actually seminars. Actually, we had an historian who talked about, who works at the Historical Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he never knew there was such thing as wargamers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so boy, you're in for a surprise.
Yeah.
And one of the people I played with was a reenactor. And again, he never knew there was such thing as wargamers. No.
So a lot of these guys were just people who got the 7 Years War Association newsletter and were not necessarily gamers.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, that's interesting.
And I know somebody was with the Civil War stuff, says he couldn't believe how many Civil War reenactors have been doing it for years, decades, and never heard there were, like, there's a Battle of Gettysburg game. You could be like Robert E. Lee and lose it again. There was one panel on light infantry tactics. He mostly talked about who taught it, not so much explained what light infantry tactics were. But he said nice things about Robert Rogers, so on.
That's cool.
Yeah. And there's the one talking about future wargaming. And I learned that the people who put out the Flames of War system...
Battlefront?
Yeah, Battlefront. They got a $7 million company. Whoa.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because they own Gale Force 9 too, I know, and I don't know if they own any other companies, but yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so I said, well, maybe there is a chance you could make money in this, because the question we have with Flames of War is there are other systems, the same era, the same scale, but they are the popular one. Why is it they succeeded and others failed, or where did they fail, or other? And so
were there any vendors there? Or
oh, there were.
What were they selling?
Mostly books and miniatures.
Interesting. Like used miniatures or new?
Both.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I was thinking there were a few of them they had like looked like they were their own flea market that they had like used magazines, used
interesting. I probably would have liked the vendors area then.
Yeah. I forgot to talk to the guy who was selling comic books. I contemplated starting to sell mine. Time to weed them out. Okay, and the big debate we had, this came up with Flint and Tomahawk, is that they allow you to throw tomahawks. And we have big questions. Did they really do that in real life? I believe it's something the movies invented. Because a tomahawk was a high-tech item for an American Indian. It cost a lot of furs to buy. And also, if you throw it away, if you come to melee, all you got is your little knife or maybe a tomahawk, musket as a club, and the musket is a high-tech weapon.
Interesting.
You don't want to damage it. So
yeah, I think he brings up a good point. I couldn't imagine them throwing out their primary melee weapon on the chance that it might hit someone when they throw it. Yeah, so he brings up a good point.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of not throwing tomahawks. I think the only time they threw tomahawks was in the time of Charlemagne. The infantry would carry like small axes called sacks, and what they do is they throw it out, and these things would embed on the other guy's shield. So what you do is you walk up, you use it as a handle to pull the shield away, and you kill the guy.
Interesting.
But for some reason that went out of style. At that point, no one else was doing that. So, anything else?
No, I think that's it. All right, thanks, guys. We'll have a new War Game Chat for you next week. Have a good evening.